Has faced a grand jury about the death of 14-year-old Celeste Rivas Hernandez.
The DA, clearly she thinks David did this, but there were more than one or more than two people who had some knowledge of it.
His body was found in an abandoned Tesla.
Officers say Celeste Rivas' dismembered, decomposing body was discovered inside the car. But according to authorities, the two have matching tattoos, the word shh on their fingers.
When a child goes missing, people think of footprints, security cameras, physical clues left behind. But Celeste didn't leave footprints. She left data. Small digital sparks, the last blinking lights of a girl disappearing in slow motion. Her online activity wasn't random. It was a pattern, a breadcrumb trail of a child whose world was shrinking while the world of the adult controlling her was expanding. And the most disturbing part? Those sparks didn't go out naturally. Someone, an adult, was switching them off one by one. Celeste Rivas Hernandez was reported missing more than once. A runaway, a child who drifted. That's the official story. The unofficial story, the one preserved by the digital archivists, shows something else. Because Celeste wasn't gone. Not yet. She was online, alive, posting, DMing, reacting, leaving traces of a life half hidden inside someone else's shadow. And then, suddenly, those traces vanished. There's a group online, a quiet, relentless collective called RIA, the Reddit Investigation Archive. They aren't fans. They aren't terrorists. They are document keepers, people who watched Celeste's post disappear in real time and saved what was left before the cleanup crews arrived. Screenshots, deleted DMs, timeline fragments, Discord logs wiped without warning. Now, according to RIA, or RIA as I like to call them, these archives show Celeste was active months after she was declared missing. Mentions of being at his place, but rarely allowed outside it. Locks on communication channels. Emotional confusion. Fear. A child negotiating the rules of an adult she trusted. A growing sense that someone else was monitoring her phone. None of these are confirmed by police, but all of them are the only surviving pieces of Celeste's voice. And then, like a switch flipped, silence. Not gradual, not teenage moodiness, not a slow fade, just gone. No more posts, no messages, no digital heartbeat. The kind of silence that doesn't come from a phone dying. It comes from someone taking the phone. Someone older, someone in control, someone with something to lose. Someone who understood exactly how dangerous a child's honesty can be. Now, the public would later learn that from investigators that when Celeste's body was found, she had likely been dead for weeks. Weeks, not days. So what happened in the space between her last online breath and the moment her real life ended? What was happening around her? Who was controlling her world? Who decided what she could say? And when she had said too much? Part 2 begins here, with the truth Celeste couldn't speak out loud, and the digital diary she never realized she was writing. Now we need to actually remember, a child's world doesn't vanish in one moment. It closes in, room by room. And for Celeste, the walls weren't metaphorical. They were real. They were physical. And according to multiple neighbors and community archived accounts, those walls belonged to David. The story told online is that Celeste was a runaway, a child drifting through couches in abandoned houses. But people who saw her Actually saw her. They tell a different story. A story where she wasn't wandering. She was kept. You see, before the mansion, there was the rental. It was a modest house compared to a mansion. A quiet street. Many people would say it was nothing special, except the people inside of it. That's what made it special. That house is where witnesses say Celeste was seen, sometimes outside, sometimes in the window, never freely moving. This wasn't a girlfriend. This wasn't a roommate. This wasn't age appropriate. This was a child living under the roof of a rising star whose entire career depended on no one knowing she existed. And then, just as David's fans started speculating on timelines, just as Celeste's online presence got scrubbed, that rental disappeared from the narrative, literally. Because suddenly, abruptly, David moved into a mansion, a bigger house, a quieter house, a house with privacy, a house with distance. And according to multiple people who interacted with that home, this wasn't just a house. It was a compound. The place where the digital erasure we saw in Act 1 became physical. Neighbors actually recall odd patterns. Lights on at strange hours, multiple vehicles coming out but never staying, a young girl glimpsed occasionally, then not at all. Security present, not for protection, but it seemed like but for containment. But the strangest detail, not the house, not the security, not even the sudden move. It was who lived inside that house with David. You see, David didn't live alone. He had a handler inside the house, a manager, a fixer, someone from his own team who lived there full time. A setup that was not normal for a 19-year-old musician, unless there's a serious need for control. Because when an adult man and a minor girl live together, and another adult is installed inside the home, that's not a creative team. That is an infrastructure. That is a system. And systems don't exist for romance. They exist for risk management. People online who interacted with David's team describe a few things. Messages being deleted, Discord channels being shut down, access to David being filtered, online spaces that once included Celeste suddenly locked. The digital cleanup we saw in Act 1 didn't happen in isolation. It mirrored what was happening in that house. A tightening of control, a reduction of witnesses, a consolidation of power. David's physical world got bigger. Celeste, her world got smaller. And the people managing him were positioned exactly where they needed to be, between David and the truth. And the moment David walked into that mansion, Celeste's world effectively ended. She didn't have a phone. She didn't have transportation. She didn't have freedom. She didn't have friends visiting. What she had was a room inside a house where stories didn't get told. They got edited, cleaned, deleted. Because the danger wasn't Celeste herself. It was what she knew. And the mansion was the perfect place to make sure no one else was found out. You see, brands don't thrive on truth. They thrive on consistency. Clean timelines, clean narratives, clean faces, and clean photos. And when you look at David's public timelining, there was a moment, a very specific moment, where the story goes from raw, rising star to something far more curated. Something that looks like a replacement strategy. Because as Celeste's presence was disappearing, someone else's presence was growing. A woman, an adult, a safe pair of hands for a brand headed overseas. Someone whose image required no secrecy, no explanation, zero risk. Her name was Hannah. Now, Hannah has everything Celeste could hope to have. And Hannah unknowingly was everything Celeste could never be in the eyes of a PR machine. Hannah Bang was adult. She was marketable. She was aesthetic. She was K-pop royalty adjacent. She is beloved by fans around the world. But most importantly, she's beloved by Southeast Asian youth markets. She is media safe. She is legally safe. And she is visibly profitable. This wasn't a romance. This wasn't destiny. This was brand engineering. And it begins the moment Celeste's digital trail goes dark. Now here's where the timing becomes damning. And I mean timeline, not accusation. As Celeste vanished, David's team begins wiping anything connecting him to Celeste. Post vanish, mentions disappear. Fans who asked questions were blocked or ignored. And community investigators watch entire digital spaces evaporate in real time. Now, simultaneously, Hannah Bang appears repeatedly in TikToks with David. Their soft boy, soft girl aesthetic gets pushed. Ship edits flood algorithmic lanes. PR framing begins. Oh, they're just vibing. Cute duo, unexpected collab. This wasn't accidental. This was a rollout. It was a repositioning of David from a boy with a secret to a young star with a marketable adult partner. That is brand management at its most ruthless. Now, if you think this is an exaggeration, remember the context. David was preparing for a world tour, but not just any world tour. Asia, the region whose entertainment industries are notoriously strict about adult minor scandals. A single whisper can annihilate a career overnight. Sponsors can vanish. Tours get canceled. Government agencies step in. Visa approvals, baby, they disappear. This is the environment David was entering. So ask yourself, what's more profitable? A secret relationship with a 13-year-old girl that could destroy everything? Or a flirt-coded, PR-friendly pairing with a legal adult who opens the door to the largest fan economy on the planet? Well, the answer is obvious, and the timing speaks for itself. Now, here's something else the RIA archivist flagged. Something most people missed. As Hannah appeared more and more, Celeste's existence was scrubbed harder. Her photos, gone. Her public hints, gone. Comments from friends disappeared. Discord channels she was seen in, locked or erased. People who mentioned her, blocked. It wasn't enough to hide Celeste. She had to be replaced. Because a brand can handle scandal, but it cannot handle a scandal involving a child. And so the machine rewrote the story. Celeste erased, Hannah elevated, David sanitized. This wasn't an accident of timing. It wasn't a coincidence. It was a clean handoff, unbeknownst to both people, Celeste or Hannah. This wasn't an accident of timing. It wasn't a coincidence. And whether or not Hannah knew, and by all accounts, she knew nothing about Celeste. She knew nothing about the way David's team was trying to use her. All she knew was this could be a good PR thing for her too. Hannah became the new face of a brand terrified of its own past. Celeste's silence wasn't an ending. It was a rebrand. And the moment her life went quiet, the machine got louder. By now, the pattern is clear. Celeste fades, Hannah rises, David's image stabilizes. But none of it happens on its own. Behind every neatly polished public image, there is a team. A group of adults whose job is simple. Protect the asset, protect the tour, protect the money at any cost. And in David's world, that team wasn't subtle. They were present, visible, deeply embedded in every corner of his life, including David's home. Let's start with the most unnerving detail. David lived with his tour manager, not near him, not occasionally visiting, not stopping by, no. Multiple community archivists and people who interacted with the team described this as a handler, a fixer, a full-time adult presence embedded inside the house. This is not normal for a teenage artist with a breakout hit. This is operational security. This, many say, is risk containment. This is someone installed to manage a narrative from the inside. And it wasn't just one person. There were the manager living in the mansion, the tour manager controlling his movement, the security person who, according to online accounts, monitored access, online moderators deleting Discord messages, assistants switching allegiance from David's team to Hannah's camp, and PR agents preparing new storylines, and advisors managing the financial shift. Each one played a role in the cleanup. Each one helped ensure that the past never caught up with the future David was being groomed for. Now here's where it gets interesting and dangerous. RA archivists noticed that as rumors grew about Celeste, people connected to David's inner circle began doing something very specific. They flipped. Not publicly, not dramatically, quietly. Handlers, assistants, team members suddenly appeared connected to Hannah's orbit. Some began posting with her, some liking only her content, some showing up at her professional spaces, some positioning themselves under her management umbrella. It's not betrayal, it's strategy. When an old narrative becomes radioactive, PR gravity pulls everyone toward the safer star. Hannah wasn't just a replacement aesthetic. She became the career life raft for people afraid the ship was sinking. And then there's the digital mess, which is never really a mess. Not when professionals do it. Discord messages deleted, archive chats wiped, channels closed, fans who asked questions, they were removed, entire subthreads shut down. People think that online deletion is sloppy. It isn't. It's surgical. It is handlers doing their job, cleaning fingerprints off of a digital crime screen. Not because they're afraid of a literal crime. We actually don't know that, even though the LAPD is investigating. It looks like there is going to be justice soon. Stay tuned for the part 3. But because they're hiding a scandal that could cost a rising artist millions. And then the financial shift. This is a detail almost everyone missed. Around the time Celeste disappeared from David's life and Hannah became the new center of gravity, assets moved. Not in a flashy, I'm going to buy a mansion way. In a quiet, deeply intentional way. Transfers to a parent, restructuring, repositioning. These aren't the moves of a carefree 19-year-old. These are the moves of a system preparing for scrutiny. It all follows the same shape. Celeste disappears, Hannah emerges, handlers reposition, assets secure, narratives clean up, digital traces vanish. This is what panic looks like when it's carried out by professionals. And it raises a brutal question. If this much effort went into hiding the story, what was the story? There are mysteries that stay unsolved because no one knows what happened. And then there are the mysteries that stay unsolved because the people who do know are not allowed to speak. Celeste's story falls into the second category because the deeper you go into the official timeline, the stranger and quieter everything becomes. Let's start with the most disturbing detail. The autopsy is sealed. The cause of death, the manner of death, the forensic timeline, the toxicology, any signs of injury, any indication of how long she'd been gone, all of it locked behind something called a security hold. Security holds are usually reserved for cases involving organized crime, high-profile defendants, ongoing multi-agency investigations, or cases where premature transparency could collapse something bigger than one victim. This isn't normal for a runaway case. This isn't normal for a teenager found in an impound car. This is silence, institutional silence. And while the public gets nothing, someone else was getting too much. A private investigator, known as FS online, Stephen Fisher, publicly stated that he testified before a grand jury in Los Angeles, not once, but twice. And then, exactly like the erasure surrounding Celeste, an attempt was made to shut him up. According to his published claims, 2 detectives appeared at his door before sunrise, telling him he could not speak about what he knew, that his testimony was restricted, that he could face jail time for discussing details with anyone, including the people he claimed he was helping. But here's the part that twists this into something darker. Stephen Fisher says he was giving no case number, no public docket, no filing to reference, just a handwritten note. Barely legal, barely traceable, perfect for silencing someone without accountability. And when Stephen Fisher claimed he pushed back, he says he discovered something crucial. California law does not gag grand jury witnesses from discussing what they knew before they testified. So why was someone allegedly telling him the opposite? Why would a system misrepresent the law to silence a witness? And more importantly, what truth was he getting too close to? But then, his claims got even stranger. He says he was instructed to appear in a contempt hearing in a criminal court with no public record and no official explanation of what law he supposedly violated. A secret hearing with no paper trail aimed at silencing someone who claimed his only sin was he asked too many questions about a child. This isn't an accusation. This is a pattern. Celeste's online life vanished. Celeste's physical location hidden. Celeste's cause of death sealed. Handlers around David silent. Former team members switched camps. An investigator who claims he was asking questions to help move this along, he was allegedly threatened. This isn't a coincidence. This is choreography. The kind that happens when the truth isn't convenient to the people who benefit from the lie. You know, if you actually go online and you listen to people about Stephen Fisher, apparently he had a deeper hold into the online chat rooms. Because allegedly, while David's team was trying to silence everyone, Stephen Fisher was also in those same chat rooms talking to people that said they had inside information who were willing to sign NDAs and gag orders so they wouldn't share what they knew with the public. And they would only go through Stephen Fisher. Many people have accused Stephen Fisher of being obstructionist and not really operating in Celeste's best interest. Again, the contempt hearing, these written papers, all of a sudden where he says he doesn't want to say anything, it is very, very odd. And that will come out in the wash. However, the official story right now is that investigators don't know how Celeste died or when. But the evidence, the sealed evidence exists. Someone knows. Someone in law enforcement, someone in a courtroom, someone in a position of power. And the silence isn't protecting Celeste, it's protecting someone else. There is also something else, something the public was never supposed to connect. When Celeste's body was found in David's Tesla, David wasn't there. He wasn't even in California. Community investigators tracked movements suggesting that he was in El Paso, Texas, while his team was allegedly cleaning up online. And while sealed decisions were being made behind closed doors, David, according to a deleted but resurfaced TikTok, was far away. Now, distance isn't guilt, but it is a strategy. And silence is survival for the system, not for the child it failed. By the end, I hope you realize that one thing is clear. Silence did not happen accidentally. Silence happened because it worked. And while the public was told very little, something else was happening quietly behind closed doors under oath. Because now, for the first time, the system itself is being questioned. According to public reporting, a grand jury has been convened in connection with the death of Celeste Rivas Hernandez. And the focus is no longer abstract. It is specific, it is personal, and it is uncomfortably close to the people who kept the machine running. One of those people, David's tour manager. According to reporting, he testified for multiple days before a grand jury. Prosecutors pressed him on a basic, devastating question. Why didn't you call the police? Not when the rumors surfaced, not when the questions started online, but many people think it was in relation to when Celeste's body was discovered. Instead, according to reporting, the tour continued. This matters, not because it proves guilt, but because it exposes priorities. Tours are not casual. They are multi-million-dollar operations. They involve contracts, penalties, insurance, clauses, sponsors, international logistics. Stopping a tour is not just inconvenient, it is catastrophic, especially to an ecosystem built off of profiting and eating off of one person, David. And this is where the machine shows itself. Because from the system's perspective, what investigators appear to be examining is not just what happened, but how the people around David responded when the unthinkable surfaced. Who was informed? Who made decisions? Who chose silence? And now, according to additional reporting, prosecutors are no longer waiting politely. A grand jury witness connected to this case failed to appear. Imagine that. All these people saying thoughts and prayers to Celeste. You got summoned and you failed to appear? The prosecutors sought a body attachment, an arrest order to force testimony. This is not routine. That is escalation. It suggests investigators believe the testimony matters enough to compel it, enough to break silence. And suddenly, the system that survived by not speaking is being told, you will speak anyway. This is the moment where the narrative changes. Because when prosecutors begin forcing testimony, it means they are no longer satisfied with surface answers. They are tracing decision-making chains. And those chains lead somewhere uncomfortable. The machine still needs fuel, but now it's running under scrutiny. By now, one thing has quietly but unmistakably entered the public record. Investigators do not believe this happened in isolation. According to law enforcement statements cited in reporting, police are examining whether more than one person may have been involved, not necessarily in the act itself, but in the decisions that followed. And that distinction matters. Because complex cases rarely hinge on a single moment. They hinge on chains of behavior. Who made the calls? Who delayed the calls? Who chose silence? Who chose movement instead of reporting? This is why investigators are not just asking what happened. They are asking who helped manage the aftermath. When police talk about complexity, they're not speaking emotionally, they're speaking procedurally. Complexity means multiple points of knowledge, multiple decision makers, multiple opportunities to intervene, and multiple failures to do so. This is where the idea of a lone actor breaks down. Because even if one person, David, people assume, sits at the center, systems do not protect themselves accidentally. They require participation. And according to public reporting, investigators are now widening their lens, not just on David, but on the professional ecosystem that surrounded him. This includes management, tour operations, security structures, people with authority over schedules, movement, and access. And this is why the grand jury matters so much. Grand juries are not convened to confirm what everyone already knows. They exist to test coordination. They compare timelines to find contradictions, to see where stories diverge. The reported threat of arrest for a non-cooperative witness is not just about one person refusing to testify. It signals so much more. It signals that prosecutors believe someone knows something material, something that affects the integrity of the case. And when prosecutors escalate like that, it usually means they're encountering resistance, not confusion. This is the moment where silence becomes suspicious. Because if nothing improper happened, cooperation would not need to be forced. And here's the part the public rarely hears. Investigations often stall, not because of lack of evidence, but because of mutual protection. People protecting careers, people protecting liability exposure, people protecting each other. That's what police mean when they say they're examining whether someone didn't act alone. They're not just talking about actions, they're talking about cover, assistance, and after-the-fact decisions. This case is no longer just about a star named David and a child named Celeste Rivas Hernandez. It's about who helped keep the machine functioning while questions went unanswered. And once that question enters the room, everyone inside it becomes relevant. This is where systems start to fracture, because the moment accountability spreads outward, loyalty contracts inward. Here is a miscalculation machines like this always make. They assume the story can be controlled as long as the narrative stays public. But investigations don't care about optics. They care about who said what, when, and why. What we're watching now is not a resolution. It's pressure building. Pressure on people who were never meant to be visible. Pressure on people who operated behind contracts, NDAs, and job titles. Pressure on people who assume silence would last forever. And this is where the system's greatest weakness appears. Because silence only works when everyone agrees to keep it. And according to public reporting, that agreement is breaking. One witness doesn't show up. Another is compelled. Managers are questioned for days. Police openly acknowledge complexity. This is not containment. That is exposure. What happens next is not about speculation. It's about inevitability. Because once testimony begins under oath, stories don't just leak, they lock in. Contradictions become evidence. Timelines harden. And personal risk starts to outweigh collective protection. This is the point where systems stop protecting stars and start protecting themselves. And that shift is dangerous, because that's when people talk. Now, part 2 ends here. Not because the story's finished, but because the machine has entered its most unstable phase. In part 3, the focus shifts again, away from the brand, away from the image, and directly onto what compelled testimony reveals, what contradictions expose, and what happens when a system designed to manage narratives is forced to confront facts it can't erase. Because for far too long, they managed the story. Now, the story is managing them.